Today I'll be talking about why I believe we need less strict deer hunting laws in Ohio. According to the magazine Game and Fish, a magazine about everything hunting and fishing, Southeast Ohio contains the highest densities of deer in the state, 30 to 60 per square mile. This may not seem like a lot, but to put this in perspective, a healthy amount per square mile is 20. And also, the land that they're living on is not all woods. There's obviously houses, roads, bodies of water, fields. So this can mean that the most populated areas can be 2 to 3 times more than what the ideal amount they need to live. So I think it's important we be conscious of our wildlife around us. Overpopulation of white-tailed deer has been a problem for the last few decades. This issue is becoming very prominent for our generation. As today, you'll notice seeing a deer is nothing special, especially in Ohio, which may make you wonder why your parents and grandparents get so excited to see one. Back then, it was simply not as frequent of an occurrence. And as someone who has had a hunting license since I was 10, as well as my father being a passionate hunter since he was in high school, this issue hits close to home. Even though hunters may get accused of killing innocent animals, most all hunters are lovers of nature and respect it. The most important rule taught in hunter education is, besides safety of course, is to be responsible and respectful of the land by having a strong moral code. Knowing this, you guys knowing this, hopefully everyone will understand that this is just not me and other hunters asking for an excuse to kill more animals. In this presentation, the three main topics I will be discussing are first, the problems the overpopulation of deer is causing for humans. Second, the problems the overpopulation of deer is causing the animals themselves. And third, how decreasing restrictions on hunting will help, in part, alleviate this problem. First, I'm going to talk about how overpopulation affects humans. Due to the loss of forests and the building up of cities, they must search for food from other sources, which include farmers' crops, home gardens, flowers, bushes, bird feeders, and even trash. And anyone who's been at home and has flower beds will recognize this. Deer also carry disease and animals that carry disease, such as ticks. Since they must get closer to civilization to find the food they need to survive, they are that much closer to people in general and can cause problems. But the most important and dangerous way they affect us is through automotive accidents. According to studies by State Farm, licensed drivers in Ohio have a 1 in 131 chance to be involved in a deer-related automobile accident this year, which makes us the 15th most likely state to be in a deer-related accident. That turns out to be about 60,000 accidents a year in Ohio. By reducing the population sizes, we can help eliminate accidents, which is sometimes fatal to people, but almost always fatal to the deer. Of course, we can never fully eliminate deer collisions, but if less deer are living off the same amount of land, they might not have to scavenge so close to roads or cities to look for food and a place to live. Second, I would like to talk about how overpopulation is hurting the animals themselves. Since nature is relatively fragile, an overpopulation of any animal on the planet is a bad thing. Of course, I do not want to see the deer population be endangered, but too many deer can harm plant growth and also take food away from other less abundant animals that need it. Overpopulation can also affect the nature of the deer. Since the deer have less land to live on, they might have to fight more for control of territory and fight for food. But the biggest problem for the deer is simply the fact that they are starving. The deer are forced to eat increasingly less food, some of which is unhealthy, like brush and flower. The American Deer and Wildlife Association, a big proponent of protecting nature and its inhabitants, points out this. Biologists are concerned the deer they are sampling have small skeletal bones and low fat reserves. The deer are forced to live a meager lifestyle in constant hunger. They also cannot fight sickness well and can spend a decent portion of their lives in pain. And the brutal winters that Ohio has do not help. Finally, I'm going to talk about how decreasing restrictions will alleviate the problem. Now, hunting deer in Ohio is somewhat restrictive. There are only 15 days in which guns are allowed for hunting, which are muzzleloaders, shotguns, and handguns. You're not allowed to use rifles in Ohio, which are much more effective. Archery hunting is allowed for 3 months, but archery is much tougher way to bag a deer, and hunters prefer to use guns over archery. They also limit the amount of deer you can get depending on what county you hunt in. They go by zone A, B, and C. The first zone A being 1 deer permit and 1 antlerless permit. The second zone B is 2 deer and 2 antlerless permits. And the third zone C you can have 3 deer and 3 antlerless. And the zones are divided up more towards population, so the southeast corner of Ohio is all zone C, and most of the rest of Ohio is zone B, and there's a couple that are zone A, like Cuyahoga County. And then this may not seem like a lot of this may seem like a lot of deer permits, but the antlerless tags are only valid after November 25th, and the season for archery goes into February, as well as the simple fact that some hunters simply do not get deer. They're not as good, so they may get 1, and then that leaves the efficient hunters to only get a few. And the other reason we should do this is because other options are not viable. Predator release has been offered, which they release coyotes and coyotes, and they have encouraged the other animals to kill the deer. But the Whitetail Journal, which specializes in stories about deer, tell us a different story. Experts generally agree that unless pressure on coyotes and other predators intense and sustained, it will have little impact on overall prey populations. So I think the best way is to limit the restrictions on hunting, which will allow hunters to have a better chance to bag a deer and take them home. This will in turn keep the population to a manageable level. In conclusion, I believe decreased hunting regulations would be the most effective option in helping the deer overpopulation problem. Less deer in Ohio would be a win-win scenario. People would have to worry less about deer eating their food, bringing disease, and smashing into their cars, and deer could live a happier, healthier, and stress-free life.